Hey, welcome back, all of you, to the next lesson about the most important piece which we all have been understanding is about the design patterns. So let's just do some hands on this topic just to get a feel for people who are very new to this area of architecture and have not been. If you really look at the Gang of Four, which is very famous for all the architects to really know, right? To understand what are the different patterns, design patterns. Sometimes we tend to forget that this completely exists in the cloud. It exists with every OEM, some of the best practices. Just that you might not have the focus because most of the time, as I told you, whenever we talk architecture, it's always the solution architect exam people think about, and or they think about the well architected framework beyond which you're not nurturing yourself as somebody who's irreplaceable. Okay, for that you'll have to have the design thinking. You'll have to really think differently, and you must really be able to create something which is very creative. So Gang of Four is something which was there, talking about different type of patterns like creational patterns, structural patterns. I think we have been groomed in this particular area in the couple of decades back, and you can go through these things once as a very good historical recap. If you finish this, you should understand from an AWS perspective, there are so many services which you can see here. Is there any patterns, design patterns you can learn? Okay. So that's the class or a lesson about. So one thing you need to understand is when I put AWS cloud design patterns, you will see that there is a section which is given here, which is talking about some of the patterns like an anti-corruption layer pattern, API routing pattern, circuit breaker pattern. You'll see so many of them here, like under the API routing pattern. Now, if you really carefully read, if you download this PDF and study it, and then you know Gang of Four was in the past, which was systems were client server, three-tier architecture. Today we are in a different world, but you imagine the concept wise it's still existing. So they come under the very important piece of resource from AWS called prescriptive guidance. So that's what I want to introduce you in this particular lesson, that when you go to prescriptive guidance, it gives you a lot of inputs about how do I really look at some of the building, some of the documentation, some of the best practices, some of the patterns, some of the kind of processes, okay, some of the DevOps methodology, all of them are listed here. And each of them is worth a 2 day, 3 day kind of workshops. It's very huge. The idea is, as an architect, if you just get hold of that this resource exists and you're able to go there and play around with some of that. Let's take an example. Suppose I pick up Strangler Fig pattern. Now, strangler fig pattern is used, and we all know from where the strangler fig pattern came. If you just go in general, go outside AWS and put Martin Fowler, right? So, because we all know he's such a important person when it comes to design patterns. So, if you go into his particular articles, you'll see there are a lot of patterns which he had produced, and it's just really brilliant to really read them if you have time, right? But coming back to our lesson today, what is very important is Martin Fowler design pattern is also the strangler pattern. Now, if you see this pattern which uh, Martin Fowler wrote about in the past, it's around August 2024, he describes it really well. Now, what did AWS trying to do is they, if you want to have a monolithic application, for people who don't understand monolithic, if you are having a like an app like an Uber, suppose in the Uber's customer, Uber's inventory, Uber's sales, Uber's all these different pieces of application are tied to one database. And if the database fails, everything is going to come to a showstopper. So monolith is where you design applications with single thing in mind. They cannot be scaled separately. Okay. But that doesn't mean for refactoring, you move everything into the world of cloud microservices, etc. But if the application requires scale, you etc. microservice. So what the strangler fig pattern works on, how do I move from a monolith into your microservices? There is this methodology. As an architect, you can read the strangler fig, and that's there in the console, if you really go back to the strangler fig pattern here, it talks about the strangler fig pattern under the AWS. Now, it did not come from AWS, it came from Martin Fowler. It's been used as a pattern, which you can really look at, like how to do this, etc. Interestingly, when you read this, you will find that there are a lot of theoretical. If I go to the console, imagine I want to migrate a project. So you see that there is a migrations here and transfer. And inside the migrations, if I use, for example, tools which are like Migration Hub, inside the Migration Hub, you will find that this implementation of the strangler fig pattern is also available. Okay, so you will be able to use that transform or something like that. So you will see that. Okay, so you will see that inside this, let me go once more, I think, to the migrations patterns here. And you will see that inside this, there are a lot of these AWS transform. Okay, and inside the transform, you will see some of the tools which are available for you to really use. Now, I don't want to get into detailing into this, but let me cancel this and just show you that there'll be some resources for you to migrate these applications. And one of the design patterns inside the transform could be how you will use this strangler fig patterns. So strangler fig pattern is a way by which you can migrate, okay, a monolith to the microservices. Okay, so coming back, in the design pattern page which is you're seeing, you will find that there are a lot of these different design patterns. And when it take you a workload, for example, you're working on an AI project, you're working on an uh, typically on IoT project, there'll be a lot of patterns which are allowed, and you may not find it very natively stated. Some things will be in best practice, some things you can read, some things will be a service guide, etc. So for this important topic, it's a very important area which you might just easily miss. Okay, so coming back, this tool, so if you just type in, go to the Google, and if you type in the prescriptive guidance, right, you will find AWS prescriptive guidance has got different sections, and you must focus on the cloud design patterns for this particular sessions. And you'll find there are a lot more things available in this, but patterns for me is the very important piece. So there are some common migration, common optimizations. All these will be written in this particular place. Please have a look at it. You'll get a good feel of it. So apart from knowing prescriptive guidance, because we are talking about building design skills where you're observing a lot of 51 diagrams, trying to draw them through different solutions, right? That is one skill. And as a personality, you're trying to build like who you are as an architect. Third one is to really look at design patterns. By you can go to prescriptive guidance, do some kind of research work. You will not find any class talking about all these resources all in one. Okay, you will find them like everywhere. There are so many pieces which has been spoken about. That's the objective of this class, short class, but it gives you a very good connect the dots into an architect journey as a practitioner. The last bit, apart from prescriptive guidance, is also the solution library. So don't forget that always architects is thinking about how do I solve the problems easily, right? So when you come to solution library, there are a lot of these solutions which are pre-written and given to you, right? Basically, there are some projects which have been done. Some solutions have been listed here. Okay, and you can filter this by the industry. Okay, you can filter this by different industry. You can differ it by cross industry, like automations, customer experience, by technology, based on which topics you're talking, like analytics, you want to look at what are the different solutions. The idea of solution library is, imagine when you are developing anything new 15 years back, you'll go and look at is there any web services available, okay, using the SOAP framework, REST framework, which can be used, reused, right? The middle tier, you separate it from the client, separate it from the backend, because you create a reusable framework. So whenever you're developing something with AWS, a typical day of life of an architect, right? You will first understand the customer requirement, try to map it into the AWS services, draw the through the design, and see whether there is a solution which is existing. Okay, that is solution library for you. This is one way to look at. Okay, another way to look at is to go to the customer case studies and look at whether there is anybody in that domain who already done it. So this is another way to look at what business problems are you trying to solve. So this is a very important piece to look at, and we will end this class by looking at the day of life, which will start from from the requirement phase up to the implementation phase, how you'll use all these tools together. But in this particular lesson, focus that if you're looking at patterns, design patterns, cloud design patterns, go to the prescriptive guidance, go to the solution libraries. Yes, I can pick one and tell you, but you can, like, if I really look at, like, I want to do something on generative AI, is there any kind of solutions available, right? So you can look at technology and see whether Gen AI is listed here. No, if it's not listed here, it will be under AI ML. Okay, so you can look at artificial intelligence, and it will talk about what are the solutions available today. So here you can see that there's a vibe coding with MCP servers. We all know MCP is very famous. If I click this, it will talk about there is a sample code available for you, how to do that, etc. You can start looking at this diagram and build it. Okay, similarly, if you are looking at video content optimization through assistant, you have another guidance. So these are all guidance given to you. It means you don't start from zero, you start from 40 to 50. Use and see whether this can be configured for your customers, if and then look at improving it with your design patterns or prescriptive guidance. Okay, and then you can start looking at saving your time for something better. You can also go to your chatbot or a foundation model, ask further questions. Where do I get that resource, this resource? Put them together, you'll be working in a very smart way. So this lesson is talking about how do I really use prescriptive guidance to find more design patterns, some prescriptive mechanisms, some solution guides. Number two, solution library, where a lot of things are listed here across industry, across technology. For example, I want to see what are the blueprint available for banking industry, financial service. It's going to list me all the solutions which are available for the banking. So if I really look at banking, what are the different solutions for banking? And then you can come down and see all the solutions which have been built by partners, by the marketplace, etc. So you can tend to see whether any of them can really solve your problems straightforward in insurance payment before you go look at. So you can have an industry solution library. Who has to look at this? Apart from the leadership team, who is going to talk to the CX level customers, it is the architects who should be aware of these resources from solution library, prescriptive guidance, should have a broad understanding of customer case studies so that you look very, very productive while you're building this project. So cross industry is all about which works across like supply chain, sustainability. Technology is something which easily you can connect to. Okay, for example, if I'm looking at something to do on migration and modernization, you will find all the patterns available here, like what how you can do certain things very fast, so you don't start from zero. Okay, a very important lesson for you, all of you to know. Hope it is useful. Okay, see you in the next lesson. Thank you.